Let us start with a new chapter on the face of it. The phrase on the face of it means looking at things superficially or on the surface without knowing all the relevant facts. On the face of it is used when something seems to be appear to be good or true at first, but might not be so. The opinion might change later on when you go deeper down and learn more about it. Let me give you a brief summary about this chapter. It is a play featuring an old man, Mr. Lamb, and a young boy of 14 years of age named Jerry. Both Jerry and Mr. Lamb suffer from physical impairment. Jerry, the young boy, has one side of his face burnt up by the acid, and Mr. Lamb has a tin leg. His real leg got blown off during the war. Jerry is very withdrawn and defiant. Withdrawn is a person who is extremely quiet and shy, basically a reserved person or an introvert person, a person who does not like to talk much to people. And defiant means a person who opposes a lot, a person who openly refuses to obey, a disobedient person, you could say. So Jerry is very withdrawn and defiant, and he feels that other people find him ugly and frightful, and that they are afraid of his ugly and horrible face. He is highly sensitive to other people's comments and their reactions, be it his own parents, family, friends, well wishers, or even total strangers. Their anxiety, concern, fear, and revulsion pains or hurts him. Jerry's parents always seem to be anxious about him and his future, and he even overheard them once saying that what's going to happen to him and how will he ever get on in this world when they are no more. Because of all these comments and reactions, Jerry develops a negative attitude and withdrawal symptoms. He does not want to come in contact with people and wants to live a secluded or an isolated life. But Mr. Lamb's attitude towards the little boy is quite gentle, protective, and accommodating. Accommodating means being cooperative, helpful, kind, and considerate. His efforts to strike up a friendship with Jerry, who is quite withdrawn and defiant, is worth appreciable. Through his peculiar way of looking at things, Mr. Lamb persuades Jerry to have a positive approach to life. He asks him to ignore the comments of the people and get on with his life. And if he chooses, he can get on better than all the rest. Apparently, the play seems to be an interaction between two persons suffering from physical impairment. Being a drama of ideas, it has minimum physical action. However, as we go on reading further, more is in store for us. We learn the mental anguish and the physical distress of the physically challenged. The play inspires people like Jerry who have some physical blemish or deformity to ignore the comments of the people and get on with their life. They should set goals for themselves and strive to outshine others. Thus, this play inspires us to take an optimistic approach to life. This is a play featuring an old man and a small boy meeting in the farmer's garden. The old man strikes up a friendship with the boy who is very withdrawn and defiant. What is the bond that unites the two? Scene 1. Mr. Lamb's garden. There is the occasional sound of bird song and of tree leaves rustling. Jerry's footsteps are heard as he walks slowly and tentatively through the long grass. The word tentatively means hesitatingly. He pauses and then walks on again. He comes around a screen of bushes so that when Mr. Lamb speaks to him, he is close at hand and Jerry is startled. Mr. Lamb, mind the apples. Jerry, what? Who's that? Who's there? Lamb's my name. Mind the apples. Crab apples those are. Wind falls in the long grass. You could trip. Ah, there. I thought this was an empty place. I didn't know there was anybody here. That's all right. I'm here. What are you afraid of, boy? That's all right. I thought it was empty, an empty house. Mr. Lamb. So it is, since I'm out here in the garden. It is empty until I go back inside. In the meantime, I'm out here and likely to stop. A day like this, a beautiful day, not a day to be indoors. When Jerry entered Mr. Lamb's garden, he thought that it was an empty place. He did not know that anybody was there. He just wanted to be in a secluded or an isolated place. He was startled when Mr. Lamb cautioned him to mind the apples lest he could fall down and hurt himself. He tried to explain that he took it for an empty house. Mr. Lamb tried to comfort him by saying that it's perfectly all right and he need not be afraid. He told the boy that the house was empty as he was in the garden and he was likely to stay there as it was such a beautiful day, a day not to be wasted indoors. Jerry, I've got to go. Not on my account. I don't mind who comes into the garden. The gate's always open. Only you climbed the garden wall. Jerry, angry. You were watching me? I saw you, but the gate's open, all welcome. You're welcome. I sit here. I like sitting. I'd not come to steal anything. No, no, the young lads steal. Scrump the apples. You are not so young. I just wanted to come into the garden. So you did. Here we are then. Jerry becomes quite angry to learn that Mr. Lamb saw him climb over the garden wall and clarifies that he didn't enter to steal anything. But instead of getting angry over his way of entry, Mr. Lamb points out that the gate is always open and he is more than welcome to come anytime, whenever he feels like. So you can see that Mr. Lamb's character is quite gentle, protective, and accommodating. You don't know who I am. A boy, 13 or so? 14. Pause, but I've got to go now. Goodbye. Mr. Lamb says, nothing to be afraid of, just a garden, just me. But I'm not afraid. People are afraid of me. Why should that be? Everyone is. It doesn't matter who they are, or what they say, or how they look, how they pretend. I know, I can see. See what? What they think. What do they think then? You think, here's a boy. You look at me, and then you see my face, and you think, that's bad. That's a terrible thing. That's the ugliest thing I ever saw. You think. Poor boy, but I'm not. Not poor. Underneath, you are afraid. Anybody would be. I am. When I look in the mirror and see it, I'm afraid of me. Mr. Lamb. No, not the whole of you. Not of you. Jerry says yes. Pause. Later on, when it's a bit cooler, I'll get the ladder and a stick and pull down those crab apples. They are ripe for it. I make jelly. It's a good time of the year, September. Look at them, orange and golden. That's magic fruit, I often say. But it's best picked and made into jelly. You could give me a hand. Derry says, what have you changed the subject for? People always do that. Why don't you ask me? Why do you do what they all do and pretend it isn't true and isn't there? In case I see you looking and mind and get upset, I'll tell you don't ask me because you're afraid to. There is a momentary pause in the conversation, and then Mr. Lamb says that when it becomes a bit cooler, he would get the ladder and a stick and would pull down those ripe crab apples. He further adds that September is a good time to make jelly, and if Derry wants, he could give him a helping hand. But Derry feels that Mr. Lamb deliberately changed the subject. He asks Mr. Lamb as to why he changed the subject, and that people always change the subject and never ask him about his physical blemish. He felt that Mr. Lamb deliberately changed the subject because he was afraid to ask him about his burnt face. You want me to ask? Say so then. I don't like being with people, any people. I should say, to look at it, I should say, you got burnt in a fire. Not in a fire. I got acid all down that side of my face, and it burnt it all away. It ate my face up. It ate me up. And now it's like this, and it won't ever be any different. Derry, aren't you interested? You're a boy who came into the garden. Plenty to do. I'm interested in anybody, anything. There's nothing God made that doesn't interest me. Look over there, over beside the far wall. What can you see? Rubbish. Rubbish? Look, boy, look. What do you see? Just grass and stuff, weeds. Some call them weeds, if you like. Then a weed garden that. There's fruit and there are flowers and trees and herbs, all sorts. But over there are weeds. I grow weeds there. Why is one green growing plant called a weed and another flower? Where's the difference? It's all life, growing, same as you and me. We are not the same. I'm old, you are young. You've got a burnt face, I've got a thin leg. Not important. You're standing there. I'm sitting here. Where's the difference? When Jerry asks Mr. Lamb, aren't you interested? Mr. Lamb replies that he is interested in anybody and anything. There's nothing God made that does not interest him, be it fruits and flowers, trees or herbs, grass or weeds, all interest him. He finds no essential difference between a flower and a weed, as both of them represent life, developing and growing. He further adds that it's all life, same as you and me, to which Jerry objects and says that we are not the same. Mr. Lamb tries to make Jerry understand that they both are from the same species, only represent different stages of growth. Jerry is young, Mr. Lamb is old. Both of them suffer from physical impairment. But this physical disability is not important. What is important is that they both are alive.
Jerry asks Mr. Lamb, "Why have you got a tin leg? A real one got blown off years back. Lamy lamb, some kids say. Haven't you heard them? You will. Lamy lamb, it fits. It doesn't trouble me. But you can put on trousers and cover it up, and no one sees. They don't have to notice and stare. Some do, some don't. They get tired of it in the end. There's plenty of other things to stare at, like my face, like crab apples, or the weeds, or a spider climbing up a silken ladder, or my tall sunflowers. Jerry is surprised at the mention of things. It's all a relative, Beauty and the Beast. What's that supposed to mean? You tell me. You needn't think they haven't all told me that fairy story before. It's not what you look like, it's what you are inside. Handsome is as handsome does. Beauty loved the monstrous beast for himself, and when she kissed him, he changed into a handsome prince. Only he wouldn't. He would have stayed a monstrous beast. I won't change. In that way, no, you won't. And no one will kiss me ever. Only my mother. And she kisses me on the other side of my face. And I don't like my mother to kiss me. She does it because she has to. Why should I like that? I don't care if nobody ever kisses me.
When Terry comes to know that Mr. Lamb has a tin leg, he says that he can put on trousers and cover it up. Then no one will ever notice and stare at the way they stare at his face. Mr. Lamb replies that some people do notice and stare at his disability. Some don't. In the end, they get tired of it. Moreover, there are plenty of other things to stare at, such as the crab apples, or the weeds, or a spider climbing up a silken ladder, or his tall sunflowers. All are beautiful and growing. Jerry is surprised at the mention of things. Mr. Lamb tries to convince him and says that it is all relative. Gradually, Mr. Lamb tries to win over the confidence of the young boy by reminding him of Beauty and the Beast. Jerry says that he has been told that story before and at once comes out with its moral that handsome is as handsome does. He further adds that outward appearance does not matter, it's the inside of the person that matters. Beauty loved the monstrous beast for himself, and when she kissed him, he turned into a handsome prince. But Jerry says disappointingly that no one except his mother kisses him, and that too on the other side of his face. He says that he does not care if nobody ever kissed him. So you can see that Jerry has developed a negative attitude. But Mr. Lamb tactfully makes Jerry shed some of his firmly fixed notions and makes him respond positively to the things of the world around him.
Ah, but do you care if you never kiss them? What? Girls, pretty girls, long hair and large eyes, people you love. Who'd let me? Not one. Who can tell? I won't ever look different. When I'm as old as you, I'll look the same. I'll still only have half a face. So you will, but the world won't. The world's got a whole face and the world's there to be looked at. Do you think this is the world, this old garden? When I'm here, not the only one, but the world, as much as anywhere. Does your leg hurt you? Tin doesn't hurt, boy. When it came off, did it? Certainly. And now I mean where the tin stops at the top. Now and then, in wet weather, it doesn't signify. Oh, that's something else they all say. Look at all those people who are in pain and brave and never cry and never complain and don't feel sorry for themselves. I haven't said it. And think of all those people worse off than you. Think you might have been blinded or born deaf or have to live in a wheelchair or be daft in your head and dribble. And that's all true. You know it. It won't make my face change. Do you know? One day a woman went by me in the street. I was at a bus stop and she was with another woman and she looked at me and she said, whispered, only I heard her. She said, look at that. That's a terrible thing. That's a face only a mother could love. So you believe everything you hear then? It was cruel.
According to Jerry, people try to console him by saying that look at all those people who are in pain and brave, and they do not cry or complain or feel sorry for themselves. They further try to console him by saying, think of all the people worse off than him. There are all sorts of people, blind, deaf, people in wheelchair, and people with other kinds of disabilities. Since Jerry has none of these disabilities, he is far better placed. But Jerry feels that all these consolations won't make his face change. He feels more hurt and pained by the comments of the people or what he overhears. Once he overheard a woman in the street whispering to another, look at that! It's a terrible thing. That's a face only a mother could love. Jerry feels that it was a very cruel statement.
Maybe not meant as such, just something said between them. Only I heard it. I heard. And is that the only thing you ever heard anyone say in your life? Oh no, I've heard a lot of things. So now you keep your ears shut. You are peculiar. You say peculiar things. You ask questions. I don't understand. I like to talk, have company. You don't have to answer questions. You don't have to stop here at all. The gate's open. Yes, but I've a hive of bees behind those trees over there. Some hear bees and they say bees buzz. But when you listen to bees for a long while, they hum, and hum means sing. I hear them singing, my bees. But I like it here. I came in because I liked it when I looked over the wall. If you had seen me, you would not have come in. No, no, it would have been trespassing. Ah, that's not why. I don't like being near people. When they stare, when I see them being afraid of me. You could lock yourself up in a room and never leave it. There was a man who did that. He was afraid, you see, of everything, everything in this world. A bus might run him over, or a man might breathe deadly germs onto him, or a donkey might kick him to death, or lightning might strike him down, or he might love a girl, and the girl would leave him, and he might slip on a banana skin and fall, and people who saw him would laugh their heads off. So he went into this room and locked the door and got into his bed and stayed there. Forever? For a while. Then what? A pitcher fell off the wall onto his head and killed him. Jerry laughs a lot. You see? But you still say peculiar things. Peculiar to some. What do you do all day? Sit in the sun, read books. Ah, you thought it was an empty house, but inside it's full. Books and other things, full. But there aren't any curtains at the windows. I'm not fond of curtains, shutting things out, shutting things in. I like the light and the darkness and the windows open to hear the wind. Yes, I like that. When it's raining, I like to hear it on the roof. So you are not lost, are you? Not altogether. You do hear things. You listen. They talk about me downstairs when I'm not there. What will he ever do? What's going to happen to him when we've gone? However will he get on in this world looking like that, with that on his face? That's what they say. Lord, boy, you've got two arms, two legs, and eyes and ears. You've got a tongue and a brain. You'll get on the way you want, like all the rest. And if you chose and set your mind to it, you could get on better than all the rest.
Jerry's parents always seemed to be quite anxious about him, and he even overheard them once saying that what will he ever do, and how will he ever get on in this world when they are no more? To which Mr. Lamb replies that he has two arms, two legs, all God given organs, and if he chooses and sets his mind to it, he could even get on better than all the rest.
How? Same way as I do. Do you have any friends? Hundreds. But you live by yourself in that house. It's a big house, too. Friends everywhere. People come in. Everybody knows me. The gate's always open. They come and sit here. And in front of the fire in winter. Kids come for the apples and pears and for toffee. I make toffee with honey. Anybody comes. So have you. But I'm not a friend. Certainly you are. So far as I'm concerned. What have you done to make me think you're not? You don't know me. You don't know where I come from, or even what my name is. Why should that signify? Do I have to write all your particulars down and put them in a filing box before you can be a friend? I suppose not. No. You could tell me your name if you chose, and not if you didn't. Jerry, only it's a Derek. But I hate that, a Jerry. If I'm your friend, you don't have to be mine. I choose that. Certainly, I might never come here again, and you might never see me again, and then I couldn't still be a friend. Why not? How could I? You pass people in the street, and you might even speak to them, but you never see them again. It doesn't mean they are friends. Doesn't mean they are enemies either, does it? No, they are just nothing people, that's all. People are never just nothing. Never. There are some people I hate that would do you more harm than any bottle of acid. Acid only burns your face. Only? Like a bomb only blew up my leg. There's worse things can happen. You can burn yourself away inside.
When Jerry asks Mr. Lamb whether he has any friends, Mr. Lamb replies that he has friends everywhere. People come in his garden as the gate is always open. Everybody knows him, and kids come for apples and pears. But Jerry feels that people passing us in the street are not our friends. Mr. Lamb tells him that they are not enemies either, to which Jerry replies that they are just nothing. Mr. Lamb remarks that people are never just nothing, never. Mr. Lamb even advises him not to hate anyone, as hatred is more harmful than a bottle of acid. Hatred may burn a person away inside.
After I'd come home, one person said he would have been better off stopping in there in the hospital. He would be better off with others like himself. She thinks blind people only ought to be with other blind people, and idiot boys with idiot boys, and people with no legs altogether. That's right. What kind of a world would that be? At least there'd be nobody to stare at you because you weren't like them. So you think you are just the same as all the other people with burnt faces, just by what you look like? Ah, everything's different. Everything's the same, but everything is different itself. How do you make all that out? Watching, listening, thinking. I would like a place like this, a garden. I would like a house with no curtains, the gates always open. But this isn't mine. Everything's yours if you want it. What's mine is anybody's. So I could come here again, even if you were out. I could come here. Certainly. You might find others here, of course. Oh, well, that needn't stop you. You needn't mind. It would stop them. They would mind me. When they saw me here, they look at my face and run. They might not. You would have to take the risk, so would they. No, you would. You might have me and lose all your other friends because nobody wants to stay near me if they can help it. I'm not moved, no. When I go down the street, the kids shout, "Let me lamb," but they still come into the garden, into my house. It's a game. They are not afraid of me. Why should they be? Because I'm not afraid of them. That's why not.
Jerry feels that Mr. Lamb would lose all his friends if he keeps coming, because when they will look at his face, they'll get afraid and would run away. To which Mr. Lamb replies that in the street, kids shout Lamey Lamb at him. Still, they do come to his garden. They are not afraid of him because he is not afraid of them. He simply ignores the comments of the people and concentrates on things which are positive and encouraging.
Did you get your leg blown off in the war? Certainly. How will you climb on a ladder and get the crab apples down then? Oh, there's a lot of things I've learned to do and plenty of time for it. Years. I take it steady. If you fell and broke your neck, you could lie on the grass and die. If you were on your own, I could. You said I could help you if you want to. But my mother will want to know where I am. It's 3 miles home, across the fields. I'm 14, but they still want to know where I am. People worry, people fuss. Go back and tell them it's 3 miles. It's a fine evening. You've got legs. Once I got home, they would never let me come back. Once you got home, you would never let yourself come back. You don't know. You don't know what I could do. No, only you know that. If I chose. Ah, if you chose. I don't know everything, boy. I can't tell you what to do. Tell me. Do you have to agree? I don't know what I want. I want something no one else has got or ever will have. Something just mine, like this garden. I don't know what it is. You could find out. How? Waiting, watching, listening, sitting here or going there. I'll have to see to the bees.
Jerry wants to know what he could do, but Mr. Lamb tells him that he does not know everything and he cannot exactly tell him. what to do. He has to find it out himself by waiting, watching, and learning.
Those other people who come here, do they talk to you? Ask you things? Some do, some don't. I ask them. I like to learn. I don't believe in them. I don't think anybody ever comes. You are here all by yourself, and no one would know if you were alive or dead, and nobody cares. You think what you please. All right then, tell me some of their names. What are names? Tom, Dick, or Harry? Getting up, I'm off down to the beast. I think you're daft crazy. That's a good excuse. What for? You don't talk sense. Good excuse not to come back. And you've got a burnt up face, and that's other people's excuse. You are like the others. You like to say things like that. If you don't feel sorry for my face, you are frightened of it. And if you're not frightened, you think I'm ugly as a devil. I am a devil, don't you? Mr. Lamb does not reply. He has gone to his bees quietly. No, you don't. I like it here. Jerry gets up and shouts, I'm going, but I'll come back. You see, you wait. I can run. I haven't got a tin leg. I'll be back. Jerry runs off, silence, the sounds of the garden again.
Jerry asks Mr. Lamb whether the people who come here talk to him and ask him things. As usual, Mr. Lamb says, some do, some don't. This makes Jerry feel that nobody ever comes. He tells Mr. Lamb that he is all alone by himself, and he even says a rude remark that no one would ever know if he were alive or dead, and nobody ever cares.
Mr. Lamb to himself. There, my dears, that's you seen too. Ah, you know, we all know. I'll come back. They never do, though. Not them. Never do come back. The garden noises fade.
In this part of play, we actually come to know that Mr. Lamb was quite lonely and was all alone by himself. So Jerry was quite right in figuring it out that Mr. Lamb was all alone and didn't have much friends. He could easily recognize his loneliness and disappointment.
Scene 2. Jerry's house. Jerry's mother. You think I don't know about him? You think I haven't heard things? You shouldn't believe all you hear. Been told, warned. We've not lived here 3 months, but I know what there is to know, and you are not to go back there. What are you afraid of? What do you think he is? An old man with a tin leg, and he lives in a huge house without curtains and has a garden, and I want to be there and sit and listen to things, listen and look. Listen to what? Bees singing, him talking. And what's he got to say to you? Things that matter, things nobody else has ever said, things I want to think about. Then you stay here and do your thinking. You are best off here. I hate it here. You can't help the things you say. I forgive you. It's bound to make you feel bad things and say them. I don't blame you. It's got nothing to do with my face and what I look like. I don't care about that. And it isn't important. It's what I think and feel and what I want to see and find out and hear. And I'm going back there only to help him with the crab apples, only to look at things and listen. But I'm going. You'll stop here. Oh no, because if I don't go back there, I'll never go anywhere in this world again. The door slams, Jerry runs panting. And I want the world. I want it. I want it. The sound of his panting fades.
Jerry's mother objects to his going back to Mr. Lamb's garden, as she had heard things about the old man. In fact, she had been warned. Though they were there for only 3 months, she knew what was worth knowing. So she stops Jerry to go back there. But Jerry tries to convince his mother by saying that she need not be afraid of Mr. Lamb. He is an old man with a thin leg. He lives in a huge house without curtains, and he even has a garden. He further adds that he wants to go there and wants to listen to things that matter, things no one has ever told him before, things he wants to think about. They are not about his face or how he looks, and he no longer cares about his face or his looks. He is now more concerned about what he thinks and feels. And he knows that if he won't go back there, he won't be able to go anywhere in this world. He wants the world. He does not want to shun or avoid people.
Mr. Lamb's garden sounds. The noise of a branch shifting, apples thumping down, the branch shifting again. Mr. Lamb, steady, that's got it, that's it. More apples fall, and again, that's it, and a creak, a crash. The ladder falls back, Mr. Lamb with it, a thump. The branch swishes back, creaks, then silence. Jerry opens the garden gate, still panting. You see, I came back. You said I wouldn't, and they said, but I came back. I wanted. He stops dead. Silence. Mr. Lamb, Mr. Lamb. He runs through the grass, stops, kneels. Mr. Lamb, it's all right. You fell. I'm here, Mr. Lamb. It's all right. I came back. Lammy Lamb, I did come back. Jerry begins to weep.
No doubt the play has a tragic ending. Mr. Lamb, who was so active in spite of his physical disability, loses balance while picking apples and falls down along the ladder. When Jerry enters the garden, he finds total silence pervading there. He is shocked to see Mr. Lamb lying on the ground. He kneels down before Mr. Lamb and announces that he has come back and implores Mr. Lamb to get up and talk. But when Mr. Lamb does not respond to his repeated requests, Jerry begins to weep. Thus, the ending is quite dramatic and stage worthy. No doubt it is a sad ending, but it does not spread gloom. It's as if Mr. Lamb handed over his philosophy of life to Jerry and inspired him to find out what he wants to be. Though the old man expires physically, his ideas inspire Jerry to pursue higher goals in life and achieve them. Thus, the ending is quite effective and meaningful. Now that we have read the chapter, what do you think is the theme of the play on the face of it? The play on the face of it draws our attention on the physical pain and mental anguish of the people suffering from some physical disability. So, the theme of the play is the consequences of the physical impairment on the affected person's body, mind, and soul. The physical pain and the inconvenience caused by the disability is often much less than the sense of alienation felt by the disabled person. Often people think that a person who suffers from some physical deformity or disability should be allowed to move in with the people having the same deformity. But the playwright Susan Hill does not approve of this idea, as she feels that it will create a strange sort of world. She feels that people should be more considerate and thoughtful towards the physically challenged and should appreciate their efforts to overcome their disability and compete with others. What is it that draws Jerry towards Mr. Lamb in spite of himself? Both Jerry and Mr. Lamb suffer from physical impairment. Jerry, the young boy, has one side of his face burnt up by the acid, and Mr. Lamb has a thin leg because his real leg got blown off during the war. Jerry feels that people are afraid of his ugly and horrible face, and he is highly sensitive to what other people say about him or what he overhears. His parents always seem to be anxious about him and his future. Because of all the comments and reactions of the people, Jerry develops a negative attitude and withdrawal symptoms. He avoids meeting people and wants to live a secluded or an isolated life. But Mr. Lamb persuades Jerry to have a new and positive approach to life. He asks him to see, hear, feel, and think about things around him. He even advises Jerry that he should not hate anyone, as hatred does more harm than a bottle of acid, because hatred burns away a person inside. He asks him to ignore the comments of the people and get on with his life. And if he chooses and sets his mind to it, he could even get on better than all the rest. Mr. Lamb's caring, kind, and considerate nature draws Jerry towards Mr. Lamb in spite of being withdrawn and defiant. Jerry's attitude towards life changes and he develops a new vision of life under Mr. Lamb's guidance. In which section of the play does Mr. Lamb display signs of loneliness and disappointment, and what are the ways in which Mr. Lamb tries to overcome these feelings? In many parts of the middle section of the first scene of the play, we can see the signs of loneliness and disappointment displayed by Mr. Lamb, like when he says that when it becomes a bit cooler, he would get the ladder and a stick and would pull down those crab apples or the magic fruit, which he so fondly calls them because of their orange and golden color. He further adds that September is a good time to make jelly, and if Jerry wants, he could give him a helping hand. And later on, when Jerry asks him, "Aren't you interested?" Mr. Lamb says that he is interested in anybody and anything. There's nothing God made that does not interest him. It may be fruits and flowers, trees and herbs, grass or weeds, all interest him. And he finds no essential difference between a weed and a flower, as both of them represent life, developing and growing. It is but obvious from the conversation between the two of them that Mr. Lamb is a victim of alienation due to his physical impairment. Though he keeps his gate open and says he has many friends, he actually lives alone, all by himself. And he tries to overcome these feelings by looking at plenty of things around him, such as crab apples, or the weeds, or a spider climbing up a silken ladder, or his tall sunflowers. He even has a hive of bees, and he hears them singing. He sits in the sun and reads books. In short, he is a nature lover, and he has adjusted to the ways of the world and does not bother about what people say about him. He keeps himself busy in meaningful activities like picking apples, making jelly, beekeeping, preparing toffees from honey, reading books, hearing music, and observing beautiful things around him which are positive and encouraging. The actual pain and inconvenience caused by physical impairment is often much less than the sense of alienation felt by a disabled person. What is the kind of behavior that a person expects from others? The play on the face of it draws our attention on the physical pain and mental anguish of the physically challenged. The playwright Susan Hill presents two leading characters, Mr. Lamb, an old man, and Derry, the young boy. Both of them suffer from physical impairment. Derry, the young boy, has one side of his face burnt up by the acid, and Mr. Lamb has a tin leg. His real leg got blown off during the war. According to the playwright Susan Hill, the actual pain or the inconvenience caused by physical impairment is often much less than the sense of alienation felt by a disabled person. Such persons expect kind and considerate behavior from others, nor do they like sympathy or pity. Neither do they like being pointed at, nicknamed, mocked at, or being made fun of. They just demand a reasonable attitude from others. People should appreciate their efforts to overcome their disability and must give them respect and honor in society. Then only they can have an optimistic approach towards life and they can lead lives like normal people. The fourth question is, will Jerry get back to his old seclusion, or will Mr. Lamb's brief association effect a change in the kind of life he will lead in the future? Jerry won't get back to his old seclusion. He had been associated with Mr. Lamb for a short time only, but in this brief association also, there was a dramatic change in Jerry's attitude towards life. Mr. Lamb's friendly, kind, and considerate nature touched the innermost chords of the defiant boy like Jerry, who wanted to live a secluded life. By his persuasive manner and peculiar way of looking at things, Mr. Lamb convinced Jerry that a life of seclusion and withdrawal from world would be dull and meaningless. The world has plenty of beautiful things to see and admire, sounds to hear, ideas to think. Mr. Lamb's positive attitude towards life inspired the boy to have an optimistic approach towards life. Moreover, by trying to convince his mother to go back to Mr. Lamb's garden, we can see that he has got clear perception of things. He no longer cares about his face or how he looks. He is more concerned about how he feels and thinks. And he knows that if he won't go back there, he won't be able to go anywhere in that world again. He wants the world. He does not want to avoid or shun people. anymore. So, by coming back to Mr. Lamb's garden is a clear indication of a new and positive change in the kind of life he is likely to lead in the future. Do you think all this will change Jerry's attitude towards Mr. Lamb? Mr. Lamb learns from Jerry that he does not like being near people and that people are afraid of his ugly and half burnt up face. Mr. Lamb offers him a new way of thinking. He tells him about a person who was afraid of everything in the world. He was afraid that a bus might run him over, or a man might breathe deadly germs onto him, or a donkey might kick him to death, or a lightning might strike him down, or he might love a girl and the girl would leave him, or he might slip on a banana skin and fall, and people who saw him would laugh their heads off. So he went inside the room, locked himself up, and stayed on his bed for a while. And after that, a picture fell off the wall onto his head and killed him. After hearing this, Jerry laughs a lot. He finds that the old man says peculiar things, and he is even surprised to learn about old man's habits. He loves to read books, and there are plenty of books in his house. There aren't any curtains at the windows. He likes light and the darkness, and he keeps the windows open to hear the sound of the wind. Jerry says that he himself likes to hear the sound of the rain on the roof, but he even hears people talk about him and his future. His parents always seem to be anxious about him, and he even overheard them saying once that what's going to happen to him and how will he ever get on in this world when they are no more. Mr. Lamb tells him that he has all God given organs, and if he wants to and sets his mind to it, he can even get on better than all the rest. All this brings a positive change in Jerry's attitude towards Mr. Lamb. He promises to come back after informing his mother, and he keeps his promise and returns only to find Mr. Lamb lying on the ground. How does Jerry get into Mr. Lamb's garden? Mr. Lamb was already sitting in his garden when Jerry climbed over the garden wall. Though the gate was open, Jerry entered Mr. Lamb's garden by climbing over the wall. He thought it was an empty place. He didn't know that anybody was there. He just wanted to be in a secluded place. On seeing Mr. Lamb, he was startled and clarified that he didn't enter to steal anything. But instead of getting angry over his way of entry, Mr. Lamb tried to comfort him by saying that he need not be afraid and pointed out that the gate was open and he could come anytime he felt like. Read and find out who is Mr. Lamb. Mr. Lamb is an old man with a thin leg. His rear leg got blown off years ago during the war. He lives in a big house without curtains, and he even has a garden where both weeds and flowering plants grow side by side. There is even a crab apple tree which has many ripe crab apples, or the magic fruit, which Mr. Lamb so fondly calls them because of their orange and golden color. The gate of the garden is always open, as Mr. Lamb enjoys company and loves talking to people. In spite of his physical disability, Mr. Lamb does not bother much about what other people say about him and concentrates on things which are positive and encouraging. Compare the characters of Mr. Lamb and Jerry. Mr. Lamb and the young boy Jerry have one thing in common.
Both of them suffer from physical impairment. The old man has a thin leg because he got his leg blown off during the war, and the young boy Jerry has one side of his face burnt up by acid, and he feels that people are afraid of his half burnt face as it looks very ugly and frightful. Apart from their respective disabilities, they have nothing in common. Mr. Lamb is old, while Jerry is a young boy of 14 years of age. Mr. Lamb enjoys company and loves to talk to people, whereas Jerry is quite withdrawn and defiant. He does not want to come in contact with people. But Mr. Lamb, in spite of his physical disability, is quite active and has adjusted himself to the ways of the world and does not bother much what people say about him. He keeps himself busy in meaningful activities and concentrates on things which are positive and encouraging, whereas Jerry avoids talking to people and has developed withdrawal symptoms and negative attitude. Mr. Lamb inspires the young boy to make his life meaningful in spite of his physical blemish or deformity. Thus, both being the victims of physical impairment have different attitudes towards life. Mr. Lamb, with his peculiar way of asking questions and persuasive power, convinces Jerry to have a new approach to life.